We be live.
Oh,
Hello,
hey.
everyone. Oh, hey. All right, guys.
Nice
So
and
we're gonna
seeing you
answer your.
here.
Uh-huh. We're gonna be answering questions in the live chat. However, Susanna has taken the time to get all the questions from Patreon. Thank you so much, Susanna, for that.
You're
Because what
welcome.
we do is we first answer Patreon questions and then we answer live chat questions, right? So the good thing about being one of the many good things about being an Atheist Republic patron is that you get to have your questions answered ahead of everyone else. And also, if you can't be here live with us, then you can send your questions ahead of time, and then we'll answer it even if you're not here live in the live chat. So again, if you want to make sure we
Exactly.
answer your if you want me and
It's also
Susanna
a good
to
alternative because we don't have super chats anymore because we're demonetized. So,
yes. So if you want to make sure that me and Susanna answer your question and you can be here live with us, become a Patreon and send us your question on Patreon. Also, I noticed people are messaging me on Facebook. Please stop messaging me on Facebook. I only I only check Patreon messages, okay? Please stop messaging me on Facebook. I can't check multiple inboxes. Patreon is where I check my inbox, okay? Thank you. Okay, so let's get to the first question.
okay, so we have a bunch of questions from Anne. The first question is Armin and Susanna, would either of you be open to talking to Dr. Deborah So or transsexual man Buck Angel regarding trans issues? I would love to talk to Buck Angel. He is an absolute icon. For those who don't know, Buck Angel is the first trans male adult film star and an absolute icon. Um, Although I would be personally more interested in talking to him about more sex positivity and stuff. When it comes to Dr. Deborah So, I'm somewhat familiar with her work. I haven't read her books, but honestly, her opinions on the transgender community are extremely controversial, and given I feel like there's that could pose a threat to our channel. Even though there are other like big channels that have her on and stuff, like we don't have the same privilege of being treated the same way or having connections that could help rectify that situation. Um, in general, I think she's like I always think it's worthwhile to engage with people. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, Arm, what do you think?
I honestly think like the trans issue is so simple, and a lot of people use the. I mean, when it comes to social stuff, the trans issue is a very simple thing. But the complications of the science behind it is used for people by a lot of people to try to make it seem like the social stuff around it is more complicated than it needs to be. Do you know what I mean? Like I think like a lot of people, when it comes to science of anything that has to do with either biology or identity or social stuff, it gets very complicated. But I think the complications of that is used by bigots to make it seem like this is not a straightforward thing that we're dealing with. Okay, because this is very straightforward. Okay, like it doesn't, you know, for scientific reasons or social discussions, it's interesting to dab into that. But honestly, like, what is this? Like, what I want, like, if people are interested in talking about that, I first want to know, like, what are they trying to get at? Like, what is the question that they're trying to answer before, like, we go into the science and before we go into the social issues around it. I want to like know what is the question that you're trying to answer, because a lot of times it comes down to something very simple. Like a lot of times people are like trying to deny the existence of certain people, or trying to find ways to be, discriminatory to a group of people, or trying to deny a certain group of people their rights. And if we identify that that's actually what is trying to be done here, like the answer to that is actually a lot more simple than all the science that we're discussing here. Like those are being used as excuses, right? Because when it comes down to, the trans people themselves, if the question is like, hey, should we use, certain pronouns that makes these people feel more comfortable? Um yeah well, like, what is the cost to you? Like, I mean, it shouldn't become a law, but it should be very easy to understand that if you're refusing to use certain pronouns just because you don't understand like how it might help them, or just because you're so easily confused. I don't know how you could be so confused by something so simple. Like, these people are under so much social pressure, they're having identity issues, and you could help by just referring to them the way they want to be referred to, and that helps them a lot. And you're like, oh no, this, and you think like you're, I don't know, this is not scientific. Like, what are you talking about? This has nothing to do with, like, it's a simple misunderstanding between what is gender and what is, sex, is something that you don't need a scientist to come and explain that to you. This is something so simple. Okay, we're talking about people's identity. This has nothing to do, like, people think like, oh, if somebody who is biologically a male, if you refer to them as a woman, you're being unscientific. Like, no, you're just an idiot. These are two separate things. Okay, we're talking about people's personal identities. We're not referring to their biological sex. Yes, these things are related, but they're not always the same thing. For some people, they're not the same thing. For some people, they feel more comfortable if they refer to as a woman. Okay, like, well, no, the word woman refers to biological female. Like, no, it doesn't. And even if it did, it doesn't have to. Words can change. You could change the definitions of the word. If it makes an entire group of people feel more accepted in society, you could change the definitions of the word to something that is more useful to society. These are simple things. This is not you being scientific. This is you just being an asshole. Okay, this is like, it's a very easy change in use of language, and in a very easy understanding of some people's identity doesn't match their whatever most people like certain people's biological sex. Okay, doesn't match with what most people with an identity that the society has mostly attributed to that biological sex. Some people don't feel like that. Okay, then we refer to them with the identity, the gender identity that they're more comfortable with. This has no cost to you. This has no cost to you, and it makes them help them live lives that they feel is more comfortable. It helps them be true to their identity. So why not? Why the fuck not? Anyways,
well, Armin, I don't think that's actually the position of either of these two individuals.
I didn't say I did. I was sorry. This was me using the question as an opportunity to go on a rant. I wasn't accusing Anne. I know for a fact that Anne doesn't feel like that. Okay.
No, not even Anne. Or I'm talking about Deborah So or Buck Angel. I find Buck Angel very interesting because
I wasn't. Okay, no. Let me clarify, because I think this is my fault for misunderstanding. I wasn't suggesting that these people maybe are like transphobic or anything like that. Okay, but I'm suggesting that a lot of people that are interested in these topics, okay, is because they, I think let's just do the 80-20. Okay, there are certain things that are so simple about this topic, and the easiest thing is like, okay, these people prefer to be referred to as this way, and they feel ostracized, demonized, isolated as part of society. And if we just use this language, and if we're nice to them, and if we accept their identity, these people it will be easier to come out of a living hell that they're living in, and they be accepted as part of a society, and it will reduce their suicide rates and reduce their anxiety and all of that. That's the 80% of the stuff that we need to care about. I mean, I understand a lot of people are interested in the science of it because of just geeks, and they're interested in science, and that's a good thing. Okay, so for example, I know like maybe Anne is interested in that, and I think like people like, even if we disagree with like Deborah So's conclusions, or like if other scientists disagree with Deborah So's, that's okay. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, these people could like do the science that they want to do, and I'm not saying if they have different conclusions that they're necessarily transphobic or not. Like, I don't know, right? But I'm just saying, I wasn't passing a judgment on maybe Deborah So or Buck Angel. I'm just saying a lot of people that are interested in this stuff might not be just because they're scientifically curious. It's because they are needlessly making something that is so simple complicated. I think like, get the simple stuff out of the way, understand that this is actually what we need to do and how we need to act. Not is actually pretty simple. All right, if you don't want to be an asshole, everything else on that is just like doesn't, what the science is behind being trans doesn't affect this. You know what I mean? Doesn't affect how you should be to be able to be helpful human beings and be accepting and be tolerant, okay, and make people feel more comfortable in their own skin, okay. The science of it is interesting, but I just want to make sure that people don't use it as an excuse to just be a bigot to trans people. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think Buck Angel is a really interesting figure in the transgender community. Like, I don't always agree with all of his positions, but he makes an effort to host a lot of like divergent or minority voices in the transgender community. And so I always find that interesting to get insight into. And what, like, for example, he wears t-shirts all the time proudly proclaiming like proudly biologically female, you know, whereas like sometimes in the trans community, like people don't like things being characterized that way, but he thinks it's very important to acknowledge his biological sex. And so both very interesting figures. Yeah, Armin?
You know what? I can understand. Like, it's true. Like, for example, let's say a trans man, okay, who's biologically a female, okay, but they're a trans man and they're a real man, because when we use the word man, we're referring to someone's identity in a society. Okay, so that's a real man right there. Okay, but okay, it's their biological female. And that's true, okay, because that's when we're talking about biologically female, we're referring to someone's sex, biological sex, not their gender identity. However, I can understand why somebody doesn't want to mention that, even if that's true, okay, because that's something that they have been born with that is unfortunate, right? It would have been more ideal for them, given the identity that they had, if they were born in a male body, okay? So even if that's that's a scientific fact that this is a biological female, mentioning that, I can understand why that would be uncomfortable for you. You know what I mean? This is like you have the inconvenience of being into a body that doesn't match your gender, okay? And I mean, transgender surgery is trying to fix that, and I'm hoping in the future it becomes a lot better. You know, it becomes more and more easier for you people to have to go through that, right? But it's kind of like, I don't know, if I don't want to compare it to something that maybe, like, imagine if you had some other biological reason that I'm not going to refer to, because I don't know if this is going to be taken out of context, right? But something inconvenienced biologically about you, which is true, okay? But if I came and tell you like, hey, Armin, this is true about you, this is true about you, or like something like uncomfortable that is true that I'm born with, or like I'm suffering with biologically, right? Like, yeah, I know it's fucking true, but I don't like, why are you telling me this? Like, this is like not comfortable. Yeah, I that is a part of me that I'm trying to fix, right? And you keep telling me like, this is true, this is true, this is true about me. Yeah, I know, but do you see why I rather focus on my gender identity rather than my biological sex? Given that that's the issue that I'm trying to resolve here. Do you know what I mean? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, no, I was just saying like Buck Angel has kind of his own ideological differences with broader contemporary transgender narratives, and a lot of it is generational. So he's from an older generation that conceptualizes and envisions these things very differently, and that's why he's become controversial like later in life. Right. But anyways, we have a lot of questions and we spent a long time on that.
I do want to. Okay, we're gonna get to that question, my guys, yes, after we go to Patreon questions. Okay, but go on next.
Another question from Anne. What are your thoughts on Mehdi Hassan claiming that the Taliban aren't Islamic? I'm not familiar with. Was this a recent claim? Did he previously claim this? I'm not familiar with him claiming this. But what's the argument like?
Okay, so it really depends what he means. Okay, when he says Mehdi Hassan, first of all, I don't know what he said, so I'm just referring to what Anne is saying. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what the claim was. Okay, but if Mehdi Hassan is saying Taliban isn't Islamic, okay, what does that mean? Does that mean Taliban isn't following Islam in a way that Mehdi Hassan understands Islam? Like, is Mehdi Hassan saying Taliban doesn't follow Mehdi Hassan's interpretation of Islam? Well, if that's true, then that's correct. However, he should phrase it differently. He shouldn't say Taliban isn't Islamic. He should say Taliban isn't following Mehdi Hassan's version of Islam. And I think Mehdi Hassan is a Shia. And
really,
I'm not. Yeah, and if Mehdi Hassan is a Shia, I mean, his interpretation of Islam a lot of he shouldn't be speaking here because a lot of
Hold up there, Armin.
yeah. Can you check actually isn't he a Shia? Because a lot of people would understand wouldn't consider Mehdi Hassan to be Islamic.
You're right.
All right. Okay. So Mehdi Hassan, maybe check yourself in the mirror before you tell who's Islamic or is not Islamic.
No.
Because the
Check
vast
yourself
majority
before you wreck yourself.
because the vast majority of Islamic schools of thought wouldn't consider your views on Islam to be Islamic. Okay. So so if by Taliban not being Islamic, Mehdi Hassan means had nothing to do with Islam, that is obviously full of crap. Okay, so I understand that is from a Muslim's perspective, it makes sense to say something is not, let's say, for example, non-radical Muslim perspective. Okay, it makes sense to them to say certain radical groups are not following the true interpretation of Islam. Okay, and again, not the true interpretation of Islam according to you, okay? Because according to them, you're not following the true interpretation of Islam, okay? But even if you want to say that, don't say they're not Islamic, because if you say not Islamic, what is that? Does that mean that it has nothing to do with Islam? Because it has something to do with Islam. I mean, even if you think that they don't have the interpretation right, all right, like you think this interpretation is correct, and you think that interpretation is incorrect, it's still an interpretation of Islamic scripture. Like you can't say it's not Islamic. You could say it's Islamic, but maybe like in your view, a corrupted version of Islam. Like at least say that. But to say it's not Islamic means like has no connection with Islam. You think the Taliban's conclusions of their values and their way of life is no reflection of the Quran and Hadith. Like if you're making that claim, then you're a moron. Like you have like, or either you're a moron or you just don't care to make sense. Like you know that you're full of shit, but you just don't care. You just have to say the things that you're saying, right? Because it is based on Islam, right? At least as a Muslim who's not radical, just say like, oh yeah, it has something to do with Islam, but they corrupted it. They have the wrong interpretation. But it is Islamic, right? So I mean, when it
Islamish.
comes to Islamish, like it is based on the Quran. Say maybe they interpreted wrong or something, but don't say it has nothing to do with Islam. But okay, so when a lot of people from our camp also make a mistake, like, well, their Islam is the true Islam, the Taliban Islam is the true Islam, and Mehdi Hassan's Islam is not true Islam. No, they're all Islam.
Didn't you just do that?
No, I'm not saying that one of them is true Islam, one of them is not. Oh no, what I did with Mehdi Hassan's view, I said according to many other Muslims.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, according to me, they're all Islam. Okay, Mehdi Hassan's Islam is Islam. Okay, Taliban's Islam is Islam as well. Okay, so Mehdi Hassan is Islam. The Wahhabis are Islam. The moderate LGBT person, who's Muslim, who thinks that this is all Islamic, that's also Islam. They're all Islam. Okay, so again, any idea that is somehow loosely connected to the Quran is Islamic, okay, or the Hadith, okay. So if some people are like, oh, it's not true Islam, I mean, no, they're all Islam. But what the problem that I have with Islam when it comes to encouraging Taliban-like behavior is, according to me and many other people, is that the easiest interpretation of the Quranic text and the Hadith does lead to violent conclusions. I'm not saying that those are the only conclusions. I'm just saying the most probable, the easiest conclusions you could get from that is those kind of conclusions. Well, you could disagree with that. Like, that's a different discussion, right? But even if I'm wrong, and even if Mehdi Hassan thinks, no, the easiest interpretation is actually not violent or blah, 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 that's a different discussion. And we could disagree on that. But what I hope we shouldn't be disagreeing on is that these are all related to Islam. Mehdi Hassan's Islam is related to Islam. Taliban's interpretation is also related to Islam. Does that make sense? Like these are two separate discussions. Like whether or not they're Islamic, that's one discussion, which I think they all are. But which one is the most probable interpretation of Islam? Which one got it right? that's a different discussion, and I think we shouldn't be mixing these discussions together. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay, cool.
Another question from Anne. Muslims often insist that the fork, algebra, etc. are quote-unquote Muslim inventions. Yet what were the actual fates of the individuals who came up with them? Well, the way I'm interpreting your question is if there's an implication as if people met a bad or untimely fate because they invented these things while being Muslim. Like, is that how you interpreted this as well?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't
actually, let me
see
answer.
why those are why there's this like presumption that there would be a bad fate for people who came up with these inventions.
Well,
I think the better
actually,
question is
they were all stoned to death, Jesus. Every single one of them.
You came up with the fork? Nah.
That's heresy. Shirk, I'll tell you. We're gonna.
I think
like the Caliph
the
is like,
more
we're gonna worship.
interesting
What is this? We're gonna
question is
worship
like,
the fork next. Off with your head.
like
Algebra, shirk.
the more interesting or kind of more correct answer or question is like, why do we attribute these to being Muslim, so to speak? Which is a gripe that Armin has with the, well, what he calls the golden age of Arabs and Persians instead of the Islamic golden age. So it's kind of, do you want to expand on that?
No, yeah. So what Susanna is referring to is like, I try to attribute these inventions with the people rather than the religion, because the religion doesn't deserve any credit for these invention, right? However, I think what if I want to go back to the questions, like, what are the actual fates of the individuals who came up with them? They were celebrated. I mean, I don't know, what did you expect? Like the people, the people that came up with algebra or like new ways of looking at history, like Ibn Khaldun or like Ibn Sina, or like Razi, every single one of them were like, not only they were celebrated, they had like the highest positions. Like most of them had access to the caliph's court. Like they were celebrated as people of extreme value, like they lived very comfortable lives. Most of them had access to the most powerful people in the region. Just like anybody that showed any potential of being contributing anything to philosophy or science or art was discovered. As soon as they were discovered, they were brought to the court of the caliphs, because the caliphs wanted to be around smart people. Like they got a lot of patronage for them. It was made like especially during the Abbasid time. Like we're right now, the examples that you're mentioning is during the Abbasid time. There was a lot of money spent to make sure that not only that the greatest thinker from around the region are coming to Baghdad. Like this was a major, like they wanted to make Baghdad, which was the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, to become a center of learning and thinking, and to try to basically steal all the smartest people from all around the region. Like if you were like a serious philosopher or scientist or whatever, I mean, at that time, those were the same thing. You were like, be very motivated to just move out of whatever village you were born into to go to Baghdad, because that's where all the thinkers were. And that was by design. They were trying to make it very attractive for the greatest thinkers of everywhere to find Baghdad to be their home, rather than they're competing. Like, I don't know, like if we were competing with the remaining of the Umayyads, like in around today Spain, you wanted to steal their thinkers, or with the Fatimiyun, you wanted to make like, hey, don't stay there, come here. We have, if you're a thinker, this is where you need to be. I mean, they built the House of Wisdom, for crying out loud. Like, do you guys think like this is all just like a Muslim conspiracy, that they had like great inventors and great thinkers? No, this was true. Like the Baghdad was like the center of thinking. Like before the Renaissance, before Europe became like a center of thinking and science, like what modern day, what is Iraq today was like the center of all science and thinking. I mean, if you ignore China, actually, but like for in all of Eurasia, Baghdad was the center of learning, thinking, doing scientific experiments, inventions, rediscovering knowledge from the past, documenting all the knowledge from the past, organizing it, making sure it's preserved. And it was the Mongols that actually ruined all of that, by the way. Like, I think a lot of people don't understand, like, a lot of knowledge that Europe has was because of the Arabs and Persians preserving it in Baghdad and translating
Mm-hmm.
everything. And that eventually, through the Renaissance, Europe rediscovered its like ancient knowledge. But I think if people don't understand that how much of that was lost through the Mongol invasion. This the ink from all the, like, anyways, all the knowledge was burned by the Mongols. Like, if all of that was like preserved, it's unimaginable how much information would have been left for Europe to work with if like the Mongols didn't destroy all the books in Baghdad. Like, a lot of people, when they think of like a library being burned, they mostly think about the Library of Alexander, like being destroyed by the Christians in Egypt. But like another great tragedy of history was what happened to the House of Wisdom when the Mongols took over Baghdad. Like, that was like a major source of information that was all lost. But yeah, I mean, guys, you're not in, like, I don't know why you think this is a loss if you're like against Islam. This is not you're not endorsing Islam if you accept the historical fact that it was many Muslims who, at that time, during the Abbasid era, during the Abbasid dynasty, it was the Muslims who were the center of knowledge and philosophy. That's historical fact. You can't deny that. You're not endorsing Islam. Like, in the same way that you're like, when the Age of Enlightenment happened and Renaissance and in Age of Enlightenment, it happened in Europe. Europe was Christian when that happened. You're not endorsing Christianity
Yeah.
if you accept that fact. So you're not endorsing Islam if you accept that this science and philosophy was being done under the Abbasid dynasty. You're not endorsing Islam when you admit that. But yeah, go on.
Oh, we just need to move through these questions faster because we're already
Okay.
halfway through.
Oh my
Um,
God, Sajib is like getting it wrong. Anyways, go.
um, Anne is asking, why do you think the Yazidi genocide by ISIS was largely ignored around the world, and that there seems to be a denial that groups other than Arab Muslims, Israeli Jews, and Arab Christians exist in the Middle East? Well, also, there are Jews in the Middle East
Who's
outside of Israel. That's a nationality. But I don't think the Yazidi genocide was ignored. Like, if you
yeah?
followed geopolitics even vaguely, because I mean, I'm gonna say ignored in the sense there are a lot of people who just don't pay attention to any of this stuff, right? That's not ignoring it. They just don't pay attention to it. They just don't have any awareness of it. But if you do follow the news, follow geopolitics, like, I don't think it was ignored at all. Like, I'm feel like people are very familiar and aware of what's happening. I mean, to the extent that I don't think people deny that there are groups other than Arabs and Jews of various, for the Arabs, like various religions, in the Middle East. They probably just don't know. They probably just don't know about it, right? Because they are often tiny minorities. Like, how many people talk about the Samaritans? Like,
Mm.
not many. Or they're Mandans, you know. Well, it's not an ethnic group. That's more, anyways. So I don't know if it's so much of a denial as
Mm.
much as people just don't know. They're not educated. But do you feel
Yeah,
like the
denial.
Yazidi genocide was ignored?
Yeah, I think denial is different from ignorance, and that's what you're referring to. But I don't feel like it was ignored. But that might be just me, because maybe I was like, maybe me and you are like consuming content that a lot of people are not. So I don't like. To me, it feels like it wasn't ignored at all. Like, that was, to me, it seemed like the Yazidi situation was one of the major highlights of what's happening when it comes when we're talking about ISIS takeover. However, I don't know if my personal experience and what I feel was the case is actually representative of how things were being covered, because Suze, me and you like cover like
I go seek out that
go
information.
we go seek out that information. So maybe like if we feel like this was highlighted, maybe that wasn't so. And I don't know if Anne's like, I think to see if this was getting ignored or not, I think you need like a kind of a analysis that takes everything into account, like rather
Like a
than our own
retrospective
personal.
analysis of news coverage. Yeah.
Yeah, rather than like our own personal intuitions. However, if it is the case that it was being ignored, it might be, and I don't know, it's because like relatively to these other groups that you're saying, and you caught that right. Like instead of Israeli Jews, maybe she meant Arab Jews, right? Because Israeli Jews are like are in Israel. I don't know, but I think like maybe the reason why these other groups get more coverage, if they do, is either because there's more of them, and also maybe because they have more advocacy groups outside of that region, right? So for example, Arab Christians, they have like many Christians outside of the Middle East who advocate for them, bring attention to their cause, because Christians, take care of Christians, and they bring attention to their plight. Jewish people do that as well a lot. Jewish people, when they're Jewish people take care of other Jewish people, but you don't have Yazidis outside. Like you don't have a Yazidi community outside of like the Middle East that is like
Well, now you do.
Yeah, but okay. I was just gonna add, well, not as sophisticated, because I just noticed that you're gonna come up with like an example that you do, but I was gonna say like you don't have Yazidi communities outside of the Middle East as big and as sophisticated as maybe all the churches that exist outside of the Middle East that want to bring attention to Christians in the Middle East, or as all these Jewish communities that are doing advocacy for Jews maybe in the Middle East. Like even if you do have Yazidi communities that are doing some advocacy, it's not as big, it's not as well funded, it's not as sophisticated, it's not as yeah, go on.
Personally, like I didn't know Yazidism existed before this happened.
Before,
and probably a lot of people were that way, because Yazidism is a very insular religion where if you marry outside of the Yazidi group, you're no longer considered Yazidi. That kind of prevents you from, I don't know, outreach in a way, or more people knowing about you in a more expansive way. Now people do, because I mean, it's been a huge issue and raised on the United Nations and tons of stuff. But yeah, now for Patreon questions, we have some questions from Music Guy. This is going to be a question for Armin, because I was a baby. Actually, I wasn't born. So,
I was a baby. You weren't born. I was a baby.
Yeah. So Music Guy is asking, could you explain what happened to the Iraqi Shias during the Iraq-Iran war? Did they stay put or leave until the war ended?
No, they participated in the war against Iran. Like I think like you overestimate the influence of Shiism on Shias in Iraq during the Iran-Iraq war. I mean, there were some Shia groups that Iran managed to like get on their side against Saddam, but it wasn't as more at all close to what Khomeini expected. Like Khomeini wanted to make this a Shia Sunni thing, and he thought like this could be like the Shias in Iraq will unite with his revolution against like a Sunni dictator, and it didn't work out like that. At that time, it was like more of a like, no, we're Iraqi, you're Iranian, and you're attacking our country. And like, I mean, Saddam had much more of a control over his people than Khomeini. And again, this is the Iran-Iraq war. What made the Iranian revolution become more nationalistic rather than religious, because I think it was a realization of how important nationalism is beyond just you can't just rely only on religious identity to win wars and do propaganda. Like because Khomeini hated nationalism, Khomeini like didn't want to at all focus on Iranian identity. He hated the concept of Iran as a whole, as a nation. Like this was about Islam, not about Iran, right? So, but the Iran-Iraq war made it very obvious of how important, like as powerful as religion is, nationalism was an important thing both in Iraq, but more so also in Iran. Like you could see like the emphasis of nationalism growing and growing and growing because of the Iran-Iraq war. And that's another reason why the Iraq Shias didn't unite the way with Khomeini the way he wanted to. Not only they didn't join his army, they stood against him and fought against him. However, nowadays it's working better for Khamenei than Khomeini when it comes to
I
using
was
Shia
gonna
identity.
say, what do you think Khomeini would do if he could see things now?
Now it's like I think he felt like very betrayed. Like he felt like, oh my, yeah, Shias are gonna, all Shias around the world are gonna come join my revolution. And like, it doesn't work like that. So it doesn't work the way he wanted to. But now Khamenei is like, well, he's like, it seems a lot more successful these days. Like the Shias in Iraq, like using Shiism in Iraq is right now for getting proxies for the Islamic Republic of Iran is a lot more successful these days, thanks to the United States by removing Saddam. It's a lot easier for the Islamic Republic these days than before. And to give credit to the Islamic Republic of Iran's like strategic is that the Khomeini's method failed to do that, but ever since then they realized that this is a slow investment that you need to make into the Shias communities that you could take advantage of later. Or you can't just be like, hey, we're Shia, you're Shia, are you going to join us? Yes, great, thank you very much. It's not going to work like that, right? So they realized like they need to keep building schools and like keep sending money and like resources to like mullahs in Shia communities around the world and build those connections over the years. And they started doing that after the Iran-Iraq war, like everywhere. And when Saddam fell, all those networks and all those resources and all those connections were already there for Khamenei to take advantage of. So you can't. This is not just an automatic thing. This is a bond that you have to work on and invest in. And they did that, and now they have proxies in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, everywhere basically. Even in
Nigeria.
Iraq. Yeah, in Nigeria, in Afghanistan, by the way, they have like the Fatimiyun Shia groups, which we'll see in the next coming decade what that is going to look like with the Taliban. So we'll see. But yeah, so that's my answer. Next question.
Music guy is also asking, growing up, I was always told the US is the world police. In past foreign events, they always seem to have their nose in everything. Now, with the Afghan war over, will the US back down from its position? Um,
Okay, you go first.
I was watching one analyst talking about how America is actually most powerful and most effective when we're not actually exerting our military power, but when we can hold the threat of it. That's when we're most effective. So I think we might try to fall back on that more. I think the US is going to try to hold on to being the world's police as strongly as possible, but maybe in less direct ways. And whether or not that will actually continue to be the case is not guaranteed at all.
All right. I think we have to fix the question because I don't think you become the world police just because you have your nose in everything. Because I think you're the world police if you have a level of control over everything. You know what I mean? Like what you just said, they're gonna try to have their nose in everything in different ways, right? Like what Susanna said. That every other country has their nose in other countries. Like that doesn't make them the world police. You know what I mean? Like, yes, US is gonna stop having that level of influence in other countries compared to before, but that doesn't mean they're not going to have their nose everywhere. They're a giant country. Of course, they're going to have their nose everywhere. Which country doesn't? Do you think China doesn't have their nose everywhere? Do you think Russia doesn't have their nose everywhere? Do you think and every other country has their nose anywhere they can? You know what I mean? And obviously, the more powerful a country becomes, the more places they're going to have be meddling it, right? So that's not a function of being a world police. That's just a function of you just trying to make sure that you have enough information and enough control as in as many places as you possibly can, and every country has that to some level, and the more powerful your country is, the more that's going to be true. So the reason why the US is going to be a less of a world police is not because they're going to stop having their nose everywhere. They will always have that. Okay. The reason why they're going to be less looked upon as the world police is because they're going to have less of a control over what's happening and less of an influence over what's happening. Okay. So, and I think that is very similar to what happened with the. Okay, so here's the thing: this whole trend of the U.S. becoming the less of a world police, this has been happening for a very long time. It's just becoming more and more apparent, right? So the height of U.S. empire, as some people describe it, was after the Cold War, right? So U.S. was already enjoyed demonstrating to the whole world that, I am the boss, I am the main, I'm a superpower after World War II. And after the Cold War also, it was demonstrated that, okay, USA, there were two superpowers, the Soviet Union and the United States, and the USA came on top, and they were like, I am the superpower. I'm not a world superpower anymore. I am the superpower, right? So you're like, I am needed for world stability, because without me, it would be absolute chaos and everything would be missed, right? So people saw that as the USA's image, right? And even after that, there were many things that made it so apparent that, okay, USA is the boss, right? And that was the height of it. And ever since then, we had and then, even a couple of years after that, you could see that everything else was showing a decline of that status of the USA. And everybody could see that, but now it has come into a crescendo, and people are like, okay, this is going to, like, for example, the Afghanistan situation is going to be is a display of USA not being the world police as much as it used to be. Like, for example, when the British Empire was falling, the fall was kind of a slow pace fall that everybody could see, but like, okay, this is not the empire that it used to be. Everybody could see that, but there was, for example, an event like the Suez crisis. It was the Suez crisis that showed people like, oh wow, this was not an imaginary decline. Like, everybody could see obviously that it's not, the British Empire is not going to have the influence in foreign politics like it used to have, and it's the USA that has that influence now. Like, it was such an obvious display of the weakness of the British for exerting their power as compared to what they used to. The Suez Canal made it so apparent, right? Even though the decline happened a lot earlier. So with the USA, is also the decline happened a lot earlier, but something like this Afghanistan situation makes the decline so obvious. Like, it's like such an obvious demonstration of it. But it's not just this. It was happening a long time ago. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay, good.
Music guy is also asking a question for me. Susanna, have you ever surprised a person in real life about your knowledge of the Ummah? Yes. Once before, last year, I went on a date with a guy from Iran, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but he was so surprised. Because I was able to ask him like specific questions, like about his experience and how things were different where he came from versus where he lived now. And I think like the specificity of what I was asking him really surprised him. Or like maybe the fact that I was able to use certain terminology. But yeah, that's pretty much the only time that's happened. There's not a very large Muslim population where I live. And also, it's not like I leave the house anyways. So, yeah.
Well, I know this is not the question, but she does still surprise me from time to time. Like, she still does know things that I don't know. So she still manages to surprise me sometimes. Like, even though I should be expecting it by now, she still sometimes surprises me. All right, let's go to the live chat question.
Yeah, Mustafa is asking.
Isn't this the first one? This one was before.
No.
Okay,
not.
Sorry.
Okay, but,
go back. Go back.
Mustafa is asking, since we can't comprehend non-existence, is it possible that our deaths will be an internal play of our final memory, as in your last thoughts are your afterlife? I think there's actually some studies about this. Like it's very well documented, like that kind of phenomenon of what is, like, you relive your final moments, you relive these really important moments of your life, like right before you die, or when people are going through very severe illnesses and are like about to die and they are recovered, like they recount like re-experiencing all these moments throughout their life. And don't quote me on this, but there's some explanation of like this is basically our brain just like misfiring and freaking out kind of in these like last moments before things totally get shut down. So, and I guess in some sense that is a sense of afterlife if that's true. um Armin.
Yeah, I don't, but I do suspect that that happens to just some people, and it's not like your entire life. It's just maybe some memories flashing. And I do think that, I'm not sure actually, but I do think like sometimes scientific literature comes up with the conclusion, and people, the media or other people, just like exaggerate what it's actually saying, and they just go make it a lot more interesting that is what it actually is. Like some people are like, oh, it seems like before
Totally.
death you have like something happens in your brain, like, oh, afterlife, your entire life flashes in front of your eyes. Like, I mean, like, I think like I'm not sure this is one of those situations, but I think like people just like to take like these very, very specific claims that maybe is true based on some studies, and maybe more studies are needed, and they just take it and they run with it, and they add to it and they exaggerate what it's actually saying. So that might be the case. And also, even if that is true, that has nothing to do with an afterlife. Like maybe like you have experienced something for like a half a second right before you die. Like, how is that an afterlife? After
Then
you're
that's
dead,
not an
then
afterlife.
I mean, the only reason why you're experiencing that is because you're not fully dead yet. You know what I mean? Like maybe your brain is still functioning for half a second, and then you're gonna be fully dead. But when you're fully dead, then you're fully dead. Like if you're still experiencing some memories right before your death, then that's not afterlife because there's still life in you. Okay, I don't know how is that an afterlife, right? Um, and also like um, you say, since we can't comprehend non-existence, I mean, that's a contradiction. There's nothing for you, the reason why you can't comprehend non-existence is because there's nothing for you to comprehend. It's in the definition. It doesn't exist, right? It's as if saying, like, how much is there in a zero? That's what you're asking. You know what I mean? There's nothing for you to comprehend. Like, how could you comprehend something that is not there? So let me actually read that. Is it possible for our deaths will be internal play of our final memory? No, no. While you're experiencing that, you're still alive. After you're dead, you're not going to experience anything anymore. There's no processor for you to do. When you're fully dead, when you're actually dead, there's nothing. There's no mechanism for you to do the processing of doing the experiencing. Like if you wanted experiencing is a mental function. Okay, it's a process. For that process to happen, it needs a platform, it needs a mechanism to do that processing. And if you don't have your brain to do that processing is impossible. Okay, there we go. I
Well,
answered.
I have a really good book suggestion. So this is one of my favorite books of all time. It's not very long. It's called Some 40 Tales from the Afterlives. It's written by neuroscientist Dr. David Eagleman. And it's an amazing book of like short fictions of like 40 different potential kind of retellings of what an afterlife is. Some of them are really funny. Some of them are kind of similar to what Mustafa posited, like kind of these flashes of, you know, what we live throughout our lives. Some of them very abstract, very interesting. Some will make you cry. Some are terrifying. So I really recommend this book. I recommend it to everyone. It's one of the best books ever. If you like to think about these things.
All right, so let's try to answer every question like very fast because there's a lot of questions and I want us to answer all of them. So let's try to go through them really fast.
That's a tall order.
Yeah.
Quick question. If I pick the Devil Spawn Patreon rank and request a topic, does it get added to a list of suggestions or topics that will be covered eventually? I think that's a really on a case-by-case basis, to be honest.
Wait, let me see what the ranking is
Devil
for that.
Spawn is $10 per creation.
Yeah, I think it would be taken into great consideration. Like, if you're that rank, yes, I think so. Wait, is that one of the? God damn it! I wanted to answer faster, but if it is one of the benefits, then we should like. Let me see what the benefits for the $10 patron is. I can't see it right now.
No, it's not.
I don't know. It's not. Okay, so I think it is, but because you're a $10 patron, I will take it into serious consideration. So there's that.
Yeah, but no guarantees because it depends a lot on what's going on with us and our commitments.
Actually, the best way to make sure it gets covered is to become a patron, and just like when we put our Q&As on Patreon, just ask it as a question, and it will get covered like that. Just ask it as a question as a patron into any of our patron Q&As. Like if you when we make a post for an upcoming Q&A, if you as a patron ask a question there, then we will have to cover it. There you go. Next.
To tag Atheist Republic with your questions. Mega Hat Atheist was saying, wait, this is a comment. Did you?
No, it's okay. I'm gonna answer
that
this.
you wanted to answer earlier. Okay,
yes,
so Mega Hat Atheist is saying no one was towards trans groups. They tried to control speech and female genital mutilation, like agenda on children.
All right, let me
rephrase this. You're saying no one was bigoted towards trans people, and no one. What he's trying to say, I'm assuming it's no one was against or bigoted towards trans people until they tried to control speech and push their mutilating children agenda.
Let me answer this. First of all, you're full of crap. People war against trans people always.
True. No, learn your history.
You're so full of shit. You have no idea. Trans people were always demonized. I have no idea what world you're living in. I don't understand how delusional you could be to say that. No one was against trans people. Like,
learn about the Compton cafeteria riot.
No, like how, like maybe like if the fact that you're so absolutist and saying no one shows how deluded you are and how full of crap you are. Okay, first of all, that okay. Until they try to, who's they? Like, look at the collectivist way that you're grouping entire group of people. So you think, like, first of all, the things that you're saying is also full of shit. They're not trying to control speech. There's no law that is telling you to, like, I don't know, tell people to, you have to use pronouns or else you're going to go to jail or anything like that. Nothing like that exists, okay? They're just telling you that you're an asshole if you don't. No, they're just pointing out that you're being an asshole. That doesn't go against your free speech, okay? They're just telling you that you're an asshole. Do they not have the free speech to tell you that you're a dick if you're being mean to other people? They're just exercising their free speech, okay? So that is not violating your free speech, okay? And even if they were like some people, first of all, it's not that trans people are not violating your free speech. There are a lot of trans people that are advocates of free speech, okay? So even if somebody was trying to make that into law, there are a lot of trans people that are against that. Look at the way you're... So this Mega Head Atheist, you have to ask yourself, am I a bigot when I attribute the actions of some people who I don't like to an entire group of people? Like, is this bigotry? Because here's the answer. Yes, it is. You're a bigot. Maybe you have to understand, maybe you have to like reflect, like look at the way you're talking, look at the way you collectively talk about entire group of people, and then maybe ask yourself, maybe it's fit for me to be like maybe it's right when people call me a transphobic. Maybe there's something to it. Maybe just maybe this is not just an accusation, like unfounded accusation. Like I am collectively referring to an entire group of people based on the actions of some people I don't like. Maybe that's the very definition of bigotry. Okay, so maybe you are the problem. Maybe you are actually a transphobe. Okay, so there's that. Bulbul.
Well, damn. Bulbul is saying, what do you think will happen to the newly enacted Texas laws? She is referring to the Texas like heartbeat abortion laws, meaning that you cannot get an abortion once a heartbeat is detected, which is somewhere from like 6 to 8 weeks into conception, which is before most women many women even realize they're pregnant. Is Roe v. Wade gone forever? So we covered this when this
Not
was
yet.
signed into law a while ago on Atheist Republic News, and now it's actually like being enacted. Well, then there's all these contentions with the Supreme Court that are going on. I actually have like a little bit of a teaser. I have a little bit of a reveal that will be very interesting. It's for secular jihadists, though. Should I give the reveal?
Yeah. Do it.
So
But do it fast
next
because we have a lot of questions.
we have just received word. This is fresh off the press. This isn't even announced yet. Okay, you're hearing it here first. That Andrew Seidel from the Freedom from Religion Foundation is going to be on Secular Jihadists next week to talk about exactly this. So
what? I didn't know this.
It was also a reveal to Armin. So definitely tune into Secular Jihadists Live next week to like really unpack this. I do not personally have nearly enough of the legal knowledge to be able to answer your question well enough, but Andrew Seidel definitely could because it's like his job. What do I think will happen? There's going to be a lot of contention over it. People are really upset over it in the news and the media, which was so strange to me because this has been like an ongoing process for like many months now. And then people reacting on Twitter are acting like this is brand new. Like, I don't understand. But
all right, let's do so much. I do want to make sure we answer all the questions.
Oh my God. Okay. It's going to come at people are going to die because of this. Like women are going to die because of this.
So let's do like really short one sentence answers from now on. Okay.
That's impossible.
It is possible if we get started. I'll show you.
Okay, AGA is saying in Victoria, Australia next year, symbols of hate, including language that demoralizes LGBTQ people, will. Okay, this is an incomplete sentence. I'll say will be outlawed.
Questions, guys, if your questions are not clear, we're just gonna move on.
Okay. Why do you think Muslims think that punishing people for all evil due to Allah making them evil when Allah tests them is a moral problem and not a logical inconsistency?
What? Why do Muslims think that punishing people for being... First, I just gonna address the question. Muslims don't, all Muslims don't think the same. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you can't talk about Muslims as if they all think the same thing. Maybe say some Muslims, many Muslims, something like that. Okay. Why do Muslims think that punishing people for being evil due to Allah making them evil when Allah tests them is a moral problem? Is not a moral problem. Okay, so this is not an Islam issue. This is an all like Christianity issue and Judaism issue as well. Okay, like you can see that in the Bible also says that, you know, for example, the story of, you know, God hardened the heart of Moses to make sure the people, he doesn't let the Jews go. And then it's like, with that, wait, does that make Moses evil or not? Like, he was just doing what Yahweh made him do, right? So this is like, no religion has ever come up with a reasonable answer for that. They just make excuses for it. A God that has predetermined everything and then expects morality, that's a logical contradiction. It doesn't make any sense. And what do religious people say? They just answer. I haven't yet seen any response to this that makes any sense. But next.
One sentence answers my ass.
Okay, because the question was hard. Like, people don't write properly. I was trying to interpret the question.
My point.
All right, exactly. Let's go.
Daylight is asking, what are your thoughts with the Taliban align with China, a country that is responsible for oppressing Muslims, and what does that say about them and the Muslims that support them? We covered this last week, and I know a clip of it went out just like today or yesterday. So if you want like an expanded answer, I would watch that. But basically, it makes total pragmatic sense. It's not ideological. It's about security. It's about security and their long-term goals of regional dominance.
Let's say no to all the trade that we could get from China because that's a sure way for them not to survive economically. Like, what did you expect? I mean, I'm not endorsing it. I just this is what you would expect though. But next.
MAGA Hat Atheist is saying, Armin, any thoughts on the election in your country of Canada?
I'm just going to answer it really quick. Based on historical records of what snap elections do to a majority party that seems to have doing good in the polls, makes strategic sense. I'm not saying it's going to give the results that they want. I'm just going to say it makes absolute strategic sense for Trudeau to call in snap for elections based on historical records and the fact that they're popular and the fact that they have been very successful with their rollout of the vaccines in Canada. It has been one of the best countries with their performance. So they want to take political advantage of that and go from a minority government to a majority government. So it makes absolute sense. Next.
My chat skipped a bunch, so if I missed your question, I'm sorry. Nawab Alex is asking, what do you think about Iran in respect to the likely or current influx of Afghani refugees?
They're having a hard time with it, and depends on which part of the government you're talking about. Some of them welcome it, some of them don't. Some of them want to take advantage of it, some of them want to stop it. But border security is an issue right now for Iran, given what's happening, especially because of the ISIS-K issue as well. It's not just the Taliban that Taliban is less of an issue compared to groups like ISIS-K when it comes to border security and radicalism moving across the border. But this is the reason why Iran's government wants to maintain somewhat of a good relationship with Taliban to encourage border security. That was one sentence. There was no dots in there.
Yeah, I heard that apparently the border of Iran with Afghanistan is actually very porous.
What?
Is that true? The Iran's border with Afghanistan is very porous. It's not. There's a lot of ways to get through it, and that's partly why Turkey is like doubling down on their border security, because they know they can't depend on the border of Iran and Afghanistan to help hold off
the Afghan refugee comings to Iran has always been a major problem, huge thing. But now, like, imagine if you have to deal with that always. Now it's going to be dramatically higher, right? In fact, it's so much so that Turkey is even worried about that. It's not just Iran, because a lot of them go through Iran and then go to Turkey. And with this expectation, Turkey has now built a wall between the wall. Like, imagine how big of a situation the Afghan refugees is in Iran, that Turkey is like, the spillover effect of that from Iran to Turkey is something Turkey is worried about. Like, imagine how much of that is Iran dealing with, that Turkey has to worry about the spillover effect of that.
Zakuro Fujiwara is asking, who's your favorite author, to be specific, within the genre of motivation and lifestyle change? For instance, mine are James Clear and Charles Duhigg. I don't read people in the genre of motivation and lifestyle change. Like, the books that I read are a lot of more psychological neuropsychological books, or more social psychology, specifically in the lens of cultic abuse and thought reform. But my favorite author in general, I really like. Wait, just a second. I'm tired. I can't even remember his name.
I haven't read Atomic Habits, but I've reviewed summaries of it, multiple summaries of it, and I found it useful. So maybe Atomic Habits would be a good book.
I really like Robert J. Lifton is the person I was thinking about in terms of thought reform. Navy psychiatrist, incredible man. And Oliver Sacks, may he rest in peace, is a hero of mine. I love Oliver Sacks, and all of his books are fascinating. Anything else?
When it comes to self-help
obviously,
books,
Armin Navabi.
No, when it comes to lifestyle changes and self-help books, I used to read some of them, and I found that a lot of them would have been like the key points of them are so much easier to like 80% of it is just fluff, and the point that they're trying to make is in 20% of the book. So now I just go on YouTube and find summaries of those books. That's what I do when it comes to that lifestyle and self-help books and stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's
if
what
I
I do
need
now.
motivation, I just watch a David Goggins video.
I don't know if you I don't know if you passed this question, but I want to address this one next.
Go ahead. So
So
Sajib is
Sajid,
asking, so Islam is pro-thinking. So
no, let me actually
Islam
give
is
you context
okay.
because I'll read it and I'll give the context. Sajib is responding to my commentary regarding that the fact that the golden age of Islam, what I refer to the golden age of Arabs and Persians, because I don't want to give credit to Islam for it. When I say that that's a historical thing and Muslims contributed a lot to science and philosophy and art, I said that's a real historical fact and we shouldn't be denying it. So Sajib is being stupid and responding to that by saying, so Islam is pro-thinking and or anti-thinking. I heard questioning anything that goes anything. What? I heard questioning anything that goes anything against the Prophet's teaching is haram. No religion on a net basis is pro-thinking. Okay, Hinduism is anti-thinking. Islam is anti-thinking. Christianity and Judaism is anti-thinking because they are pro-faith. Okay, pro-faith, pro-trusting, anti-skepticism, anti-questioning. Questioning is blasphemous. Okay, so this is not a nature of Islam. This is a nature of religion as a whole that is anti-thinking. However, when I say Muslims have contributed to philosophy and science, and new ways of thinking, and have contributed a lot in invention, that is not an endorsement of Islam. Muslims are more than just Muslims. Okay, Muslims are way more than just Muslims. Okay, like Ibn Sina was a Muslim, but a lot of his thinking was anti-Islamic based on what people considered Islamic around him. Okay, according to many people and not according to other people. Right? We have, like, for example, like, is Christianity anti-thinking? Yes. Who came up with the theory of the Big Bang? It was a Christian. Okay, it was a Christian that came up with the theory of the Big Bang. So what do you think that proves that Christianity is not anti-thinking? It's not anti-science. It is anti-science. Okay, but a Christian is more than just a Christian. A Muslim is much more than just a Muslim. Okay, a Hindu is much more than just a Hindu. I was going to say Jew, but then people are going to get confused about ethnicity and religious identity, so I'm not going to go there. But anyway, so I just wanted to address that. But yeah, you could pick the next question.
Cool. Then I just see like a whole lot of nonsense in the chat.
Yeah, there's one specific nonsense I want to highlight because it was such a juicy nonsense that I think we should end with there, or like unless you find something else. Yeah.
No, go for it.
No, I'm gonna find it. You could pick one other question before I find it.
My chat keeps on bumping up, so I can't find what I was looking for. Wait.
Oh, here, I found it. We could end it here, okay? This is such a perfect brand of bullshit that I like to highlight at the end of the show, okay? So I was talking about how Mega Hat Atheist was possibly being transphobic with his comments, okay? And this is what he comes back at me, because he doesn't listen. He doesn't pay attention to what he's saying. He just has this knee-jerk reaction to like, oh, you're calling me a bigot, so you don't have anything to say. Because he actually doesn't listen. He's incapable of actually paying attention to what I'm saying, right? So he's saying, you're wrong. They are pushing agendas and laws. Typical BS. Don't question, or you are a bigot, transphobe, etc. Boring, okay? Mega Hat Atheist, I specifically came up with why what you're saying is bigoted, and you are changing what I'm saying because you have nothing to say. You have nothing to say. Did I say don't, like, when in my statement did I say don't question or you are a bigot? You are having imaginary arguments. Like, this is what a lot of right-leaning people do, okay? A lot of religious people, right-leaning people, it's all the same tactic, okay? They have such weak logic, and they have no response to what you're telling them. So they have to create this really pathetic argument that they think that they're defeating, like, oh yes, you're telling me not to question things, and if you do, you're a bigot. I did not say that. I specifically said you are attributing the actions of some people to an entire group of people, and then you're judging them. You're judging all of trans people based on the actions of some people that you don't like, and that's a form of bigotry when you're collectively judging an entire group of people based on their biological identity or biological traits that they have. Okay, I specifically said that, and look how you changed it. You say, don't question or you're a bigot transfer, etc. Boring. Maybe it's boring to you, mega head atheist, because you keep imagining people are saying things to you that make sense and you're not listening, and you keep hearing the same argument that you have created in your own mind, and because you're just hearing that in your mind and you're defeating the same pathetic argument, and you're thinking like you're logical because you're defeating the same imaginary argument in your mind, maybe that's why it's boring for you, because you're incapable of addressing what the real argument is. Right? Look at you. They are pushing that agenda. Who? Trans people? That's why you're a bigot. You're not a bigot because I'm telling you that you shouldn't be questioning things. You're a moron for thinking that's what I said. You are a transphobe because you're judging an entire group of people because of their biological traits based on the actions of a few people that maybe you don't like. Either you're imagining it or maybe they happen and you don't like. Either way.
That's why I was like, oh, because you did again the exact same thing that we pointed out as the issue, which was just the generalization with they. Like, right. There are tons of, it's a very diverse community. There's a lot of people who actually disagree with a lot of, I don't know, different things that are being pushed. So yeah. Wait, this is funny. Skebos is saying, I came for the Q&A, but I stayed for the juicy nonsense.
All right, I think we're good. I think we answered as many as we could.
I know we powered through that.
Yeah, that was very good. I think I enjoyed it. Okay, guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time with us in live chat. We enjoyed your questions. The quality of the questions was good. Try to make it more like, maybe before you post your questions, like maybe read over it and see if it's like grammatically correct, because sometimes it's hard for us to spend time just trying to.
I mean, I don't even meet that standard often, though, to be fair.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, guys. It was fun. Thank you.
Make sure to tune in. Yeah. We have the news.
Oh, subscribe.
In 2 days, so subscribe. Also, if you want to make sure your question gets answered, you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. And not only will we answer your questions first in our Q&As, you also get all our sexy blasphemous art and other goodies. Anything else?
And also, yes, D is saying, like the video, guys. Please like the video. It really, really helps our channel. So make sure you like the video. It makes it more people end up seeing the video if you like it. Okay. And also subscribe to our newsletter. Link in the description. You get our juicy blasphemous art for free. All of it gets sent to you. They're beautiful. They're blasphemous and they're extremely sexy, and they're available to you for free. So link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter.
Aren't you doing an appearance on Myth Vision?
Oh, yes. Check out the community tab for a stream that I'm going to be participating in. So as a guest, so come there and check it out. It's good. It's already, I think, posted in the community tab. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So go check that out.
And I can make an announcement. It's not live yet, but I'll do the announcement here. I'm going to be coming on Abdullah Samir's the Friendly Ex-Muslim channel soon on Monday. Amazing. So nice. Tune in for more information on that as soon as it's
we'll post it in the community tab on Atheist Republic's YouTube channel. We'll put when it gets announced, we'll post a link to it on the Atheist Republic's community tab. Go show Susanna a lot of support when she's there. So yeah, make sure that you're there.
Aww.
All right, guys. Thank you, guys, and thank you for being here. This was fun. Thank you for the questions, even the nonsensical ones. Thank you for that. Anyways, bye.
It's the thought that counts.